Where drugs are prepared, sold and used.
Whether you like it or not, drugs are a way of our society. It's a way of life. People are going to sell drugs anywhere in the UK, regardless, because there's a demand for it. It's as simple as that. However, it seems gone are the days where a group of friends would chip in money to buy drugs and sell it, and they all make profit off it. I shouldn't even say it, but I'm going to. County lines are destroying the drug ecosystem. Literally, they're taking over, and part of the reason why they're so successful is because vulnerable teenagers and young adults are being forced or plucked from the streets and promised a false life where they can join a gang or gain respect or reputation or afford the nicer things that they see elders wearing. It's a falsified cycle that puts a lot of pressure on people. They end up creating this whole facade, whether it be a gangster or a knife man or just your plain, typical, run-of-the-mill, everyday idiot. Basically, what I'm saying is, people end up becoming what they aren't. Which leads me to this. So one mother has warned of the dangers of joining a county line drugs gang, and to be frank, some of the crap her son was put through is really sad.
I am calm, man! Oh, look, this is a joke. I'm the victim of it.
So Ben McCloughin had boiling water poured over his hands, which when police saw the evidence could only compare it to a Hollywood movie. So, Ben McCloughin had only been in the gang for 2 weeks before he was hit by the stark realisation that this was not for him. He didn't want this life, and he knew that the strangers were not his friends. At 20 years old, he should have known better, but circumstances and personal situations skewed his impression of the world. As sad as it seems, Ben McCloughin wasn't privy to the real world. He was raised in a middle-class family in the idyllic village of Buckden, Cambs. In such a place, you weren't really going to see drug deals going down, packs being thrown from the 15th floor of a flat, or people talking about plugging themselves when they are out and about. Part of his naivety has to be put down to him being a fully registered full-time carer to his 41-year-old mum, Louise McCloughin. So what I'm saying is, these people in the county line gangs treated my guy like a mark. In fact, he was a target who they could control, or they thought they could control. So again, it took only 2 weeks for Ben to determine he didn't like drug-carrying life. When he confronted the county lines gangs and disclosed that he wanted out of the drug gang, after 14 days, his gang repaid him by kidnapping him from his girlfriend's house. Imagine, on January 13th, 2019, the county lines gang refused to let Ben cut ties. What they did was travel to his girlfriend's house in Northampton, kick down the door. Once they were inside, the girlfriend was pushed aside on the floor and told to shut up, and Ben McCloughin was tasered in his thigh. Ben's mum added her son was then thrown into the back of a car, taken to a drug den in Corby, and beaten and tortured like a wounded animal. Part of the torture practice was that the gang pulled out a machete and used it to hack away at his hair. They then dragged Ben downstairs and put his hand under the sink and poured a mixture of boiling water and sugar over both hands. They wanted to make sure that not only would the scalding water burn his skin, but they wanted to add the sugar to ensure the water formed a kind of paste and stuck to the skin, like glue. It's a tactic usually used in prisons to ensure burns intensify to a maximum level. People compare it to napalm due to the way it attaches to the skin. While this was all going on, the county lines gang members were screaming and shouting that they were going to kill Ben for disrespecting them by not wanting to continue selling drugs for them. In the attack, Ben suffered third-degree burns on his left hand and has suffered severe nerve damage to the point that doctors are unsure whether he will ever gain full use of his hand again. The idiots that did this to him are 18-year-old Derek Harris, 19-year-old Tushawn Spencer, and 21-year-old Abdillah Kumar. The three brutes were jailed for a combined 22 years on November 20th for the kidnapping of 2 men and 1 woman and torturing one of them, that person being Ben McCloughin, of course. Ben McCloughlin's freedom was only made possible after one of the men that were kidnapped had managed to escape while Ben was being tortured, and he was able to raise the alarm. That's what I call a well worth sacrifice, to be honest. Spencer was jailed for 8 years for his role. Kumar was given 5 years and 2 months. Harris got 9 years after being sentenced for a separate stabbing. All 3 pricks pleaded guilty to kidnapping, but Spencer also pleaded guilty to GBH at Northampton Crown Court in October. A Northampton police spokesman says, "When you hear the words kidnap and torture, you might think of Netflix and Hollywood films, but this is a story much closer to home." So, one thing I will say is, thank God the trauma didn't have any lasting effects or damage on Ben's psyche, because despite being scarred for life, literally, physically, both mentally and physically, and having a machete pulled out on him, dragged from his partner's house and tasered, he has still managed to have a loving relationship, and it says that he's expecting to become a father. Though, it should be mentioned that Ben McClough's address is classed as living in a remote part of the country. That's code for, under no circumstances is he giving up his personal details, like address. Fair play to the guy. I just want to go on record and say I do not condone drug dealing, but if you are going to participate in illegal activity, at least have the grace and decorum to not target vulnerable people and use them as testers or runners. Don't put people in those kind of occupations where they are destroying themselves. In other words, we know you're evil, but don't be all the way evil. Have a bit of kindness, man. It's the same as not kicking a person while they're down. I hope that resonates. Safe.